I'm starting to think I should clean this more often. Hello fellow hunters of the blue, and welcome to my channel, and also welcome to another episode of Heavy Contrast, a series where I try to paint one miniature to the highest standard possible using just contrast paints and highlights. And on this episode I'm going on easy mode because we are painting a super cool Sylvaneth warrior. So let's get cracking. As you can see, we're starting from a base coat of Wraithbone, and we are going to start painting his tabard first. And for this I'm going to start with the Garros Dunes. His tabard has a nice gradient, growing from an ochre to the wood color of the main body, and the Garros Dunes is the perfect base coat for it. As always, I'm going to apply this and remove any excess where it's pulling too much and I don't like it. Our layer of the Garros Dunes is now completely dry, and I'm going to take a mix of 1 part contrast medium and 1 part Gorgrunta fur, and I'm going to apply it into the top of the tabard. So starting from here until about there. Then I'm going to take my brush, clean it, and feather this out into the rest of the tabard. And just like that, we have an instant gradient very easily. Again, go around absorbing any excess where you don't want it. With my first application of the 1-to-1 mix of Gorgrunta fur and medium dry, I'm going to apply a second one, and this time I'm going to do it further up the tabard. For example, up to there. Again, cleaning my brush in the water and blending it, feathering it out towards the rest of the tabard. Just like that. Our second application of Gorgrunta fur and medium is now dry, and I'm going to move into Wildwood and again mix 1-to-1 with contrast medium, and I'm going to apply this just to the top of the tabard. Just to the very top. Just like that. This time I'm only going to do one application, this one that you're watching now. And once this is dry, I'm going to move into painting the body. With that drying, I'm not going to wait and I'm going to apply pure wildwood onto all the bark. As you can see, I'm going to apply this to a whole section, in this case a leg. And I'm going to go back with a clean brush and absorb any excess. We don't want too much, just want the right amount. Once I'm happy with the section, I'm going to keep on moving to the rest of the model. I'm going to try to be careful around the skin, because I really don't want to go back with Wraithbone to fix it, but if I have to, it's not a big deal. I'm just trying to save myself a bit of work. Also, I have decided that I want to add a bit more definition into the tabard, so I'm going to take Wildwood again, and I am going to run this into the deepest recesses here, very carefully. This is optional, of course, if you are happy with the contrast level as it is. You don't need to do this, but you know how I am. My wildwood is now completely dry, and I cleaned up all the areas that I messed up a little bit with Bravebone again, and I'm going to base coat all his skin before moving on to the highlights. My reason being, if I stray out a little bit with the skin, I can clean it up with the highlights on the wood, but if the highlights are already applied, it's going to be a bit more difficult. So I'm going to take a mix of 1:1 Aethermatic Blue at contrast medium, and I'm going to apply this over all the ghostly skin bits and the sword. For the blade of the sword, I'm going to do an MMM pattern, and I'm going to apply the same mix of Aethermatic Blue and contrast medium, but I'm going to apply this heavily onto the bottom here. I'm cleaning my brush and feathering it out, and I'm going to apply this on the upper side here. Once this first layer is dry over the sword blade, I'm going to apply a second one. The glazes over the sword are now done, and I'm going to take the same mix again. We are still working with 1 part Aethermatic Blue, 1 part contrast medium, to shade down and define the features on the skin a bit more. So I'm going to apply this wherever I feel I need a bit more intensity. So instead of going all over, this is more like kind of a selective application of this mix. With the skin now much more defined, I'm going to start adding tones to all the ghostly details. I'm going to start with the sword, and for this I'm going to take a mix of 1 part Blackbeard Flesh and 3 parts contrast medium, and I'm going to apply it all over the sword. I'm not trying really, it's just more of a glaze really than a full layer. I'm not trying to get this into any recess or to pull anywhere. I just want to tint the sword with a very different color than what it is there, so it will stand out from the body a bit more. I almost forgot about this, but I'm going to take the same Blackbeard Flesh mix with contrast medium that I applied over the sword, and I'm going to apply it around the gem here in his belly. I'm now going to add a bit of differentiation to his hair, and for this I'm going to take Orc Flesh, and I'm going to thin it down a lot with contrast medium. I'm not even measuring this because it's very, very thin, and I don't want to waste any paint, but it's this thin. I'm just dabbing a tiny bit of Orc Flesh into a pool of contrast medium, and I'm going to apply this over his hair. The key here is to try and get it a tiny bit different, so you can tell it's not the same color, but at the same time it doesn't stand out too much as being very different. With all the tones applied, I'm going to do the final touches of contrast into the ethereal part, starting with the sword, and for that I'm going to use Achillean green. I'm thinning my Achillean green with contrast medium to about this sort of consistency. I'm not even measuring this. I'm going to apply a little bit of this here towards the bottom as I did with the Aethermatic Blue. I'm cleaning my brush again and feathering it out just to add a bit more contrast. Same here towards the top. I also could take this same mix and I'm going to use it to do like basically a recess shade into all the parts of the mini that I feel need a bit more definition. This is especially important around his face, So we have very good definition and more focus on there, which is very important. I'm not going to touch his hair with this. I like the hair the way it is. And of course, once that first layer over the sword blade is dry, I'm going to keep applying this until I'm happy with the contrast level. With that last shade with Achillean green now done, we have finished with all the contrast application in both the bark and the ethereal bits, so I'm going to start highlighting. I'm going to start with the sword, and for this I'm going to use Deepkin Flesh. I'm just going to do an edge highlight with this. Also, don't forget to pick the middle ridge of the sword. And on top of that, I'm going to add a bit more interest, creating like a kind of light glinting of the sword by making a cross about here. So I'm just doing very thin lines with Deepkin Flesh. Just like that, those two crosses there. And I'm going to take, and I'm also going to take this Deepkin Flesh, and I'm going to do some kind of dots here. Just like that, and here. Oops. We want this to be thin and small, so if you make a mistake like I did, just quickly rinse your brush and clean it up. And finally, just taking pure white and I'm going to do a final edge highlight on this. And also with the same white, I'm going to basically edge highlight the whole of the skin. With all the ethereal parts out of the way, I'm going to start highlighting all the bark and the leaves here on his tabard, and I'm going to start highlighting with Deathclaw Brown. And what I will do with Deathclaw Brown is start highlighting the top row of the top leaves, and I will stop once this color kind of disappears. For example, you can see that here that color is basically gone, so I'm not going to keep on highlighting. Further down, I'm now going to move into Bestigor Flesh, and with Bestigor Flesh I'm going to do a couple of things. First of all, highlight the next row of of leaves, kind of and stop when it disappears, just as I did before with Deathclaw Brown. And I also going to do a thinner edge highlight on the leaves that we highlighted with Deathclaw Brown. So I'm just going to concentrate this highlight more on the corners of each leaf, or each piece of bark, or whatever this is. You get the point. I'm now going to move into a Shabti bone. And again, with the Shabti bone, I'm going to highlight the rest of these leaves. And with the Shabti bone, I'm going to do a thinner edge highlight on the upper leaves. So on these ones that were done with Besticor flesh, I'm going to do a smaller edge highlight. And the same here, but even smaller. And now for the final highlight, I'm going to take Wraithbone, and I'm going to pick the very thinnest edges. I'm going to be more aggressive here in the last row of leaves. But here on the top row, I'm going to do just very small dots. Basically, I'm going to use less and less Wraithbone the more up we move on the tablet. With the tablet out of the way, I'm going to move into the bark and I'm going to edge highlight everything using Baneblade Brown. This is by far the longest process in painting Sylvaneth if you want to take them to the next level, because the bark is just so intricate, so full of detail that you can take here a long time. When I'm reaching here to the tips of the leaves, I'm going to just paint this whole section with Baneblade Brown. I'm not going to go for the edges, I'm just going to paint everything. Basically any section that we want later on to be greener or looking like greener sprouts, I'm just going to lay Baneblade Brown heavily there. With that highlight done, I'm going to move into Karak Stone for a second highlight. And what I will do is basically just the same highlight I did, only smaller. So I'm just going to go and pick up a smaller bit of wood that I did with the Baneblade Brown. Again, when I'm reaching these tips that I want to be greener, I'm just going to go full on them. Just like that. Same when I'm reaching here towards the leaves. Of course, I'm leaving a bit of the Baneblade Brown in between that and the rest of the body, so you kind of get like a gradient. But I'm not going to blend it, this would just be a basic layering. With those highlights done, we're going to move into the last highlight for the wood details, and this will be Wraithbone. And what I will do is just do very small dots of Wraithbone in the very corners and peaks of all the wood. And when I get to a bit that I want to be greener, again I'm just going to lay this down completely over those bits. And here when it meets the actual leaves. As they are already painted with Wraithbone, I'm just going to again lay down, so it creates kind of a gradient there. Same for all these wispy branches, that we want greener later on. With the wood bark now finished, I'm going to paint all the leaves and all the thinner branches, and for this I'm going to use a 1-to-1 mix of Militarum green and Plaguebearer flesh. So of course I'm going to pick up the leaves with this, but also again these thinner branches, and you can go like midway into the wood actually with this, so that part of the wood is also kind of has a green tint, a green look to it, which I think looks pretty good. And with that done, note that I also painted in that way the thorns hanging from his hand. I'm going to take Yanden yellow and I'm going to apply this over the gem on his belly that I base coated using Wraithbone. I'm also going to apply this over all the leafy details. I want them to be a bit more yellow. So I wasn't really convinced with how the Yanden yellow looked. I thought it would look a bit different, so I've been doing a couple of tests and now I'm happy with what to do next. What I have done is take Warp Lightning and apply this over those areas. I want those branches to look like really vivid green, and this looks much better. With those layers now applied, I'm going to highlight all the green areas, and for this I'm going to use a 1-to-1 mix of Mood Green and Green Camo. With that highlight done, I'm going to move into Green Camo. I'm just going to pick the most prominent features with this. And yeah, with that highlight on, I'm going to move into what I think will be the last one. This is Dawn Yellow, and I'm going to apply this both here on the gem on his belly and small dots here in the green bits. And now to finish off the yellow gem, I'm going to pick up pure white and then just going to do the final highlight, just a couple dots of this in the very corners of the gem. With all the green bits now finished, I'm going to move into the white ropes that he has and the purple gems, and for this I'm going to take a mix of 1 part Druchii Violet and 2 parts Contrast Medium. I'm going to apply this over the ropes here. And for the purple gems, I'm going to use pure Druchii Violet, and I'm just going to apply this over the gems. With the first coat of Druchii Violet and gems dry, I'm going to apply the second one just on the upper sides. Those layers of Druchii Violet are not dry, and with all those layers dry, I'm going to start with the white ropes, which I will just layer using Corax White, leaving the application of the Druchii Violet in the recesses. Just like that. And here in the gems, I'm just going to do a very small line on the lower part. And with with those highlights of Corax white done, I'm going to move into pure white to do the final highlights. And here on the ropes, I'm probably going to do kind of an edge highlight. And on the gems, what I will do is a very teeny tiny highlight here. And also a dot of white in the darkest corner. And with that done, there's only just one detail left to paint, and this is the gold. And for this I'm going to go typical and use Retributor armor for the base coat. My Retributor armor is now dry, and I'm going to shade it using Gilliman flesh. This is straight out of the pot, and I'm just going to do a layer of this over all the gold details. With the Gilliman flesh now dry, I'm going to highlight all the metallic details using Canoptech alloy. And I will just pick up all the prominent details with this. I really like Canoptech alloy, it's one of my favorite metallic colors. Just goes well with everything. And with that last step done, our Sylvaneth dude is finished, and this is one of the most fun minis I have ever painted for the Heavy Contrast series. Sylvaneth really lend themselves so well to use contrast paints, and I really love this kind of color palette. So guys, I really hope you also enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye! Do you like my videos and want to help me make them? Well, there are several ways you can do that. You can follow me on social media, you have the links to all my social media in the description below. You can also check all my affiliate links in the pinned comment of this video. Use those links in your next hobby purchase and help me, without any additional cost to you. I also have merch that you can see just below this video in the shop tab of my channel. But most importantly, there is Patreon channel members. You have the link to my Patreon in the description below and the pinned comment of the video, or if you prefer, you can just click the join button below this video. Patreon channel members help me do all the cool projects that I want to make and help me improve the quality of my videos. Don't be afraid, no content will ever be hidden behind a paywall, but it's a nice way to help me, and you will get something back for your generosity. As I said guys, thank you very much for watching, and a special thank you, first of all, to Mitch the Terrainosaur. Mitch runs an amazing YouTube channel which all profits go to charity. Check him out, link in the description, he makes amazing videos, it's also for a great cause. And secondly, but not less importantly, thank you to Daniel Figueiredo, Heather Amster, Lawrence Gismundi, Nicolas Fournel, Ben Morin, Christophe Moret, Javi Mota, Joshua Bohannon, Michael Boyer, Table Miniatures, Beldrain, Victor Domena, Equitas, Arundel, Charles Armintash, Chris Fivey, Kieran Murthael, Darcy Farrar, Dr. V, Elder Ketch, Gareth Smith, G4, Jamie Milligan, Josh Simpson, JT Butler, Kevin Mian, Kevin Sulars, Renat Lindemann, Mark Jarvis, Matthew Miller, Natius Maximus, Wamba Stockbetter, Samuel, Sasha Park, Supernef, and Bill Caswar for being the coolest persons in the planet. Be like these fine folks on my Patreon and take control.